Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a first look at the MBT-B. This tank many of you will have seen, heard and maybe even played against before. This tank is currently in its 5th iteration of testing. This thing has been a single shotgun, an autoloader, just a traditional auto reloader, and now, well, something a little bit different, and we're going to have a look at that today. You'll have probably seen many other videos from many other creators on the MBT-B. However, those videos are now outdated because this tank has changed again. They have released and re-released another iteration of this tank to the Supertest. So, let's actually have a look at what that means. So, for the MBT, its statistics have changed completely to what the 4th iteration was. The 4th iteration had a gun mechanic very similar to the Lion. So that's the tier 10 Italian medium tank, where the first shell takes 20 odd seconds to reload. The second shell takes the lowest amount of time, and then it ramps all the way up to the end of the magazine, essentially meaning you fire off the second shell. However, that has gone, and it has been replaced with something familiar, but not on heavy tanks at all. So, if any of you know the Char Mle, that's the tier 9 French light tank, which has that really funky clip that you fire, you click, and then it fires 2 shells. Yeah, well, the MBT is going to be getting that mechanic, but with a heavy tank twist. So, it is going to have 3, essentially, rounds in the magazine. However, those rounds are 2 shots. So basically, it has 3 bursts as part of a clip. So, what does that mean? So, its alpha damage is 400, which giving it a clip potential for each burst of 800. Times that by 3, you have a clip potential of 2,400. So that's really good. That's on par with the Foch B, which is the tier 10 French tank destroyer, which has a terrifying clip. However, this thing is a completely new thing. Having this mechanic on a heavy tank is completely new. I do have a clip right now, which I'm going to show you, of a tank on the Russian server, so Mir Tankov, called the Gendarme, which is quite controversial, which has this mechanic. So it's not a new mechanic completely to heavy tanks, but it is for World of Tanks EU, NA. So let me show you that clip. So, as you can see, it basically, you click, it fires 2, you click, it fires 2, you click, it fires 2. That is how the MBT-B is going to work. So, to reload a full magazine, so full magazine is those 3 bursts, it's going to take you 38.3 seconds. However, that gives this thing a really terrifying DPM of just less than 3,200. However, it is to be noted, obviously you can't run a gun rammer on it because it is a tank with a clip. So, it's going to be fixed around 3,200. But one thing you're going to think is, this tank must have something going against it. Does it have terrible gun handling? Well, in reality, no, it kind of doesn't. On base, it has 0.34 dispersion and 2.3 seconds aim time. That's really quite nice. However, as you probably saw in that clip of the Gendarme, you fire that first shot, and that first shot has 0.34 accuracy. However, it's that second shot which is massively affected by the bloom after firing. So you fire that first shot with 0.34 accuracy. However, that second shot, the accuracy becomes 2. So this thing's dispersion after firing is 2, which is terrible. And you only have 0.25 seconds time in between the 2 shots, between that burst. So basically, your second shot is going to be horrendously aimed, but your first shot providing you aimed that well, should go roughly towards the target. So that is going to be an issue for this tank. In terms of, yes, it's got a clip potential of 2,400, but is that actually 2,400? Because if you miss the second shot in each of the bursts, you instantly half your clip potential, pretty much instantly halving your DPM. So that is definitely going to be a balancing factor of this tank. If any of you have played the Char Mle, you will know how much of an issue it is. So you fire that first shot with the accuracy, but then that second shot it goes anywhere often because it blooms out. You have the dispersion after firing, and yeah, the time in between the two shots is tiny, so you don't really have much time to completely re-aim. So that is quite a complicated mechanic. Hopefully I've explained that quite well. But let's have a look at this thing's other statistics first of all. So, mobility, it's quite quick. 55 forwards, 15 in reverse for a heavy tank. That's not slow. This thing is going to be pushing it up there, with slower mediums, even, some faster heavies like the 260, the IS-7. This thing will be able to get into position really quite quickly. And because of that, it might be able to play some really funky positions with its 10 degrees of gun depression. Always really quite nice. It's got quite low hit points, and actually, to be fair, 2,100 hit points is really quite low for heavy tanks at tier 10. We normally expect them to have about 2,300 at the lowest, so 2,100 is really quite low. The armor is interesting, and this is one of the big things that has changed between the multiple iterations of the MBT. It used to have incredible turret armor, incredible hull armor, it used to kind of just be a traditional heavy tank. However, they've kind of made it a little bit more like a 50B. So the hull is now 105mm and the turret now 200mm. Well, what does that mean? Well, probably the flat parts, which are kind of here, are probably going to be really quite weak. It's probably going to be this gun mantler area here that's quite strong. However, the hull is likely going to be pretty weak in most places. Maybe this little plate here is going to be an auto ricochet. We don't really quite know, because obviously we haven't got the updated armor statistics on tanks.gg to have a look. But basically, don't trust the turret armor, don't trust the hull armor on this thing. It's not going to be great anymore. Interestingly, the penetration values have stayed the same. So 260mm AP, quite nice standard penetration. But the gold penetration of 320 is lacking a little bit. And you will find it wanting in certain situations, especially against more heavily armoured heavy tanks and tank destroyers. So, that's the MBT-B's statistics. Let's compare them to two tanks that are already in the game. Well, I'm going to compare it to the AMX-50B and the T-57 Heavy. Both the 50B and the T-57 are traditional autoloaders. So they reload a clip, they shoot, then they reload a full clip. And they fire one round for every single time you click. So traditional autoloaders. However, the MBT-B has that mechanic, but we're still going to compare them. So in terms of DPM, the MBT is going to have ever so slightly less than the T-57 Heavy. The T-57 Heavy has great DPM. The MBT, therefore, is also going to have great DPM. They all have 400 alpha, but do remember, what did I say about that dispersion, that issue with the bloom massively increasing after firing that first round in the burst? Maybe that DPM is going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard to reach that DPM and therefore reach that clip potential, because maybe those second shots bounce, ricochet, go into the ground, miss. So do bear that in mind. However, with the 50B and the T-57 Heavy, they don't have those issues. They have an intra-clip reload, for example, for the 50B, 2.5 seconds, the T-57 Heavy, 2 seconds, which allows them to use that 0.34 dispersion for every shot, with basically enough time to fully aim each shot between the intra-clip, which is really quite nice, which is why those traditional autoloaders can be really quite punishing, and you can, if you're a good player, have good aim, and you get a little bit fortunate with RNG, do 1,600 damage clips very reliably. Doing 2,400 damage clips with the MBT-B might actually be a different story. We don't really quite know yet. Obviously, you know, this is all on paper. We haven't been able to try it in practice. So, as we said, both of them, all three tanks are kind of similar in terms of DPM, alpha, obviously with the MBT having a higher clip potential, but maybe not in practice. So, reload time for a full clip, the MBT is the longest, however, it does have that higher clip potential. So 38 seconds compared to 28 for the 50B and 23 for the T57 Heavy. You've got that intra-clip, so the MBT is going to have a 3-second intra-clip, so you click, 1, 2, 3 seconds. You click, 1, 2, 3 seconds. You click, 1, 2, full reload of 38 seconds. However, for the 50B, it's obviously you click, 2.5 seconds, you click, so on and so forth, for the 4 rounds in the magazine. Same for the T57 Heavy. For the aim times, on paper, the MBT is going to be the best out of the three. 2.3 seconds compared to 2.4 for the AMX-50B and 2.59 for the T57 Heavy. So that first shot should be more accurate than the other two tanks, as we said. We don't really quite know what that means for the other shots in the burst. The AMX-50B also has 10 degrees of gun depression, same as the MBT. However, obviously the T57 Heavy has only 8 degrees, so the MBT is winning in that department. And we can see here that HP is low. You know, it is the same as the 50B, so maybe that is kind of an idea that they want this tank to play in a very similar fashion to the AMX-50B. So the MBT to play very similar to the 50B. You know, playing it on that second line, playing it in a very opportunistic way. It hasn't got the armor, and it hasn't got the HP to purely just tank shots. You have to be very methodical in your trades and play almost like an assassin. Whereas the T57 Heavy has that little bit more of armor, has that little bit more HP to be able to play it in a little bit more of a brawling, tanky kind of fashion. And as I said, the armor does reflect the HP pool and kind of dictates the playstyle. But let's have a look at the penetration values finally. So the MBT is going to have 260mm AP standard, which is going to be better than both the 50B and the T57 Heavy's standard rounds of 257 for the 50B and 258 for the T57. So it's going to have marginally better standard penetration. Quite nice, I guess. However, different story for the gold penetration. Is going to have the lowest gold penetration of the three, 320mm APCR for the MBT compared to 325mm APCR for the 50B and 340mm heat for the T57 Heavy. So as I did say right at the start of this video, the gold penetration on this tank is definitely going to be lacking, especially when you fight those more heavily armored tanks at tier 10. Where you will struggle to pen flat, even flat armor on those tanks. So, that is the MBT-B, the upcoming American reward heavy tank, which has just come to the Supertest with its 5th iteration. This thing is a bit of a freak. It really is. It's bringing a mechanic that we've only before seen on French light tanks to American heavies. It has been tested so many times in so many different forms. Let's see how this one is. Maybe we see a future iteration. If we do, I will do my best to update the changes in the comments in the description of this video. And just very quickly, I'm going to mention when it's highly rumored we may see this tank. It is pretty much not confirmed, and I won't say confirmed. A lot of people and from reliable sources are saying that this is going to be the next campaign reward mission tank. So what I mean by that is similar to the Object 260 and Object 279E. We're going to have a third opportunity to play through missions, various different types, with this being the pinnacle of those missions. So keep your eye out for that into 2025. Do check out my Future of World of Tanks video. I'll put a pin in the top right corner now, talking about what we expect to see in 2025, mentioning potentially a future campaign mission reward. And do let me know what you think about this tank. Let's have a discussion in the comments. Do you agree with me that it looks kind of great? Do you think this is going to be an interesting mechanic? And if you did like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all again very soon.